Okay, welcome everyone, and thank you for attending today's PerimeterX webinar, Client-Side Supply Chain Risks and Website Code. Today, our speakers from PerimeterX are Kunal Modasia, Senior Director of Product Management, and Chief Marketing Officer, Kim DeCarlis. Today's webinar will be roughly 20 to 25 minutes, followed by 5 to 10 minutes of Q&A. And before we get started, I do want to mention a few housekeeping notes. This webinar is being recorded and we'll be providing the recording and slides after today's live event. You can expect an email with all the content we're presenting today following the conclusion of our webinar. I also want to encourage everyone to submit any questions you have for Kunal and Kim through the Q&A option on the Zoom webinar platform, and we will answer your questions as they arrive. If we're not able to get to everyone's question today, we will certainly follow up with a response afterward. You can also find additional content in our follow-up emails later. And with that, I'd like to now hand it off to Kim DeCarlis to get started with our presentation. But both of you, thanks for joining us.
Great, thanks Tom for having us. And I want to extend my welcome to all of the participants joining us today, and a special call out to the PerimeterX customers that are taking some time to join us. We are always happy to help you protect your website, web apps, and mobile apps from online attacks and automated fraud. And we're pleased to share with you some additional insight today about client-side supply chain code and some things you need to do to pay attention to that. And I'm really excited to be working with my colleague Kunal again today. So let's just jump.
Yep.
Yeah, great to have you, Kunal.
Yep,
let's just jump right into it. Let's start out with just a little bit of a discussion about modern web apps. And back in the day, as people like to say, web apps were built as a monolithic piece of code served from a web server. And that's why they were called web servers, right? Because they served your website or your web app. And typically a company that was hosting a website would serve all of the content out. They wrote it all, they controlled it all, they kept very good track of it. But times have changed. Modern web apps today are very different. And in fact, most companies write a small minority of their actual website code themselves. Well, where does the rest of that code come from? Well, I think the folks on the phone probably know that. You are using snippets of JavaScript, snippets of libraries from open source locations, as well as from trusted partners. So many people use social sign-in, so authentication maybe through Facebook. If you're shopping, you probably know that most e-commerce retail sites don't build their own e-commerce process. They hand you off to either Salesforce Commerce Cloud or Magento, and maybe payment is processed by PayPal. If there's a video embedded, it's probably coming from YouTube. If you're looking at a site with instructions for how to get to a physical location, that's probably being served from Google Maps. So indeed, today's modern web apps are a compilation or a collection of Lego blocks. And what that lets you do as an organization is innovate quickly, focus your resources on the true differentiators of your website, but not worry about having to build all of these common components when you can get them from someplace else. And that's really a very important opportunity for people, because you can get to market with changes quicker. You can really focus on the user experience and the elements that best define your brand. But that does, cause some challenges. Let's take a look at what we call the digital supply chain. So everybody knows a supply chain is the group of vendors you rely on to build a product, whether it's a car, you're relying on the tires, you're relying on the window from somebody different. But in a website, you've got a digital supply chain, and that is relying on all of your various partners to deliver functionality for you to make your website work. Well, the challenge with that is that because you are relying on all of these different components, you oftentimes will have a blind spot. You've got a big attack surface because there's lots of code snippets that you're using from people you know and people you might not even know. And that's what this graph here on the left exemplifies. This is a diagram of a pretty well-known, fashion website. And what the bubbles show is all of the different libraries on which this website relies to deliver their user experience. And what you can see is that there's first party, which is code that they write themselves. And then there's third party scripts, code from their trusted partners like Google Maps, like Facebook social login. But then there's a scatter of other code that those partners might rely on that make up their digital supply chain. So oftentimes the owner of the website doesn't have visibility to all of the code snippets, whether it's third or nth party code snippets that come together to form their site. And that creates both a blind spot and a very large attack surface for cybercriminals to take advantage of. And we looked at some data recently, and in a market study found that 93% of companies recently have suffered a direct supply chain breach because somebody attacked a snippet of code on which they relied for their website. And oftentimes it wasn't a piece of code they knew about, it was a piece of code called on by a piece of code that they knew about. So supply chain has a big implication here for people managing websites and web applications. In fact, this was validated by a study that we do every year in conjunction with the Osterman Group, where we go out and survey people about the client-side code that they use. And we really find that there is a blind side of organizations just don't have visibility into everything running on their site. And you can see the numbers here, they're kind of scary. You know, we find that 70% of the scripts running on a typical website are from a third party or even further, an nth party. 30% of organizations don't trust their third-party script providers. And it's not because they think there's malintent, it's just that they don't know what their code review processes are, what their security processes are, and so on. So there's a lack of trust playing into that relationship. And probably the most startling statistic we found is that only 8% of organizations have insight into the third-party scripts on their website. So I'm a math geek, and if you do the math real quick, what you find is that 8% and 70%, that means there's only 5.6% of the scripts on your site that come from third parties that you have visibility to. That's a big blind spot and a big area of risk that we want to make sure you understand and provide some suggestions for how best to address that. Now, this creates a gap in compliance and a gap in security. And here's a good example. JavaScript on a website is typically served by the client side, right? That's why we say client side, blind side. And if some malicious JavaScript is put on a site, it can potentially read fields before they are encrypted and sent to wherever it is they need to go. And here's a great example. We've all shopped online at some point. You put in your credit card number, you might put in your gift card number, and those can be skimmed from the form on the site before they're encrypted and sent back to the server that needs them. This is very similar to the kind of skimming that we used to see and continue to see with ATMs and with sometimes credit cards that you use at a gas station, that somebody might have installed a skimmer to steal that information. This is the same kind of thing that happens online. A piece of vulnerable JavaScript can invite somebody to skim information off your site. And the challenge here is that you don't even know this is happening because you're getting the payment information that you need, but the payment information, credit card number, other PII might also be going to a threat actor and putting you in, a potential compliance and security breach situation, which we want to help you stay away from. And with that, I want to highlight another survey that we did recently. This is a survey done, the Cyberthreat Defense Report. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. It was very interesting to us as we looked at the results that the biggest concern for web and mobile attacks, personal identifiable information harvesting, PII harvesting, was top of the list at 46.6% of people saying, yes, I'm worried about that. And this was a survey of cybersecurity professionals from across the US and across the world that answered this survey. So very global concern. You also see here that digital skimming and mage card attacks were a concern of about a third of the folks that responded to the survey. And so we've talked a little bit here about what's going on, what is the supply chain, what is the risk. The good news is that people are paying attention to it as evidenced by the CDR. But what I want to do now is turn it over to Kunal to talk a little bit more about how do you mitigate this risk? If we know it's out there, what are you going to do to get in front of it and make sure that your organization is not put in a bad light? Kunal, let's take the audience through that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kim. So before I walk you, the audience, through the best practices that one of the Code Defender, our products customer, a digital online education platform company, how they use our product to mitigate the client-side risk. Before that, I would like to quickly recap two things that Kim, you mentioned, and I want to make sure that the audience drives home those 2 points, right? One, why the modern apps are different and what is driving them. And that's basically the R&D team that is looking for a accelerated development. As Kim mentioned, they are using some of the third-party libraries for the authentication or a social media or a payment, right, without rewriting them. That's one. Second, the marketing team that is responsible for growing the business, they are bringing some of the third-party libraries to improve the user experience, or how do they monetize the user that are coming on their websites via ad tech platform, or improving the conversion, etc. Now, those third-party libraries that you are integrating on your website, they create a blind spot. And how that is happening? Couple of points, right? First, the client-side third-party libraries that runs on your browser. So for example, when you say www.homedepot.com, those third parties are basically libraries that you have integrated in your website. The browser simply downloads those third-party and the dependency code that comes with those third-party libraries from the server, and it renders dynamically on the browser, which is your device or my device, right? Now, these third-party libraries, they have a same level of access as your first-party homegrown or home-developed scripts, right? Meaning those third-party libraries can access any field on your websites, and they could potentially exfiltrate any data even before your user submit. And as Kim was showing the gap in a compliance and security in one of the slide, right, where let's say you are on a payment page and you are providing your credit card information, those third party can access that because they have a same level of access as your third party. And the last but not least here, the third party code, and this is something that interesting anecdote that we learned from our customer, that the third party code is the only code that runs in customers' production environment that they don't have a control over it, right? And it is dynamically loaded at a runtime. So now imagine if any of the third-party libraries or their dependencies, if they get breached, then the attacker could inject the malicious scripts at the runtime directly on your browser and my browser, and they could snip the PII and PCI data, right? So this is what we are learning from our customers, some of the case studies. And with that said, Kim, would you move to the next slide? Yes. So now let me give you an example of a large digital education platform company. They use our Code Defender product to mitigate the client side's risk. Now, this customer, the director of InfoSec and compliance, he showed us that the Code Defender, our product, had generated or given a visibility with the PII sniffing that was done by a social media script that was running on their website, and that was mainly for user engagement and the conversion. But with the Code Defender, he was able to get the visibility that this script is also accessing the PII and the PCI information of the end user coming to their website, right? With the Code Defender, with our script analyzer, he was quickly able to drill down into the second level detail and find out these social media scripts, which other third party, fourth party, and the nth party script it is calling, which domain it is communicating to, right? All the dependency and every single thing that he was able to quickly drill down, and he was able to collect the evidence that he could provide it to the company that was the vendor, third-party vendor that was accessing the PII and PCI on their website, right? So he leveraged the Code Defender to get the visibility aspect, right, into the client-side supply chain. Second, next, Kim. Yes, then he leveraged the something called a script connection map and our risk analyzer feature, where he was able to quickly drill down and look into the dependency map, where, as you see on the bottom right, the the social media script was calling the 5 other scripts and they were accessing the few fields, and then those fourth party scripts were calling the another fifth party and sixth party and the nth party. So he could clearly gather the evidence that what is the end-to-end the chain here. And as you see the red spot on the bottom right hand side, where we flag the anomaly, because we are constantly analyze the script, the field that they are accessing it, building their baseline, and every time we find some deviation, let's say suddenly this script is accessing the PII or PCI, we flag it, right? Similarly, he used the report, which he was able to provide it to the executive briefing and said, look, with the code defender, these are the number of a PII and the PCI snapping and the vulnerabilities that is coming on the there through the client side supply chain attack. Next slide, please. Now, this is where it becomes very interesting. So first, we help this digital education platform company with a visibility into the third-party script with the PII, PCI sniffing that they were doing it. Then with a behavioral analysis, we exactly pinpointed where the problem is, right? And we give him all the evidences to build his case. Next, the last part, how do I respond to this threat? How can I quickly mitigate this threat, right? And that's where we have a very comprehensive mitigation approach, where we have recently introduced a granular client-side mitigation or a JavaScript blocking. Now, this is where it becomes interesting, right? Now, some of these social media third-party scripts that you have on your website, you cannot simply remove it because they are there for a legitimate purpose. They are there to monetize the user, right? User analytics and etc. So with our granular JavaScript blocking feature, he was able to block the specific action of that social media script without entirely removing it. Meaning, he was able to block that social media script from accessing the password and the credit card information while allowing it to continue to run and monitor the user activity on the website, which is for the legitimate purpose, right? In addition to this client-side granular blocking, we do support the CSP-based policy, as some of our customers who likes to use their infrastructure that they have built with a CSP, which renders the server-side policy on the browser, right? So we do support that, but all in all, this customer leverage our comprehensive mitigation capability. He was able to use the granular blocking, and without removing the script, he was able to proactively mitigate the compliance risk. Next slide, Kim, please. Absolutely. So here is the final summary here. So as you saw that the code defender, it gives you the visibility with your first party, third party, and nth party supply chain, client side supply chain scripts that is coming through your third party client side integration. Plus, it gives you a complete visibility into all the dependencies those third parties are calling, like a fourth party, fifth party, and nth party, the domains that it interacts, the browser storage and cookies and everything that they are doing it, right? Additionally, the code defender also helps them with a comprehensive mitigation capability, where they can control the behavior of a scripts. They can apply some granular blocking without removing those scripts. And additionally, the code defender also has a persona-centric reports that you can use it for a compliance or for your operational team or for your executive reporting. With that, I would like to pass it over to Tom for the next step.
Well, excellent. Thank you, Kunal. Okay, folks, at this time, we're going to take questions from the audience. Once again, please use the Q&A option below on your Zoom interface, and we will answer your questions as they arrive. And if we're not able to get to everyone's question today, we will certainly follow up with a response afterward. All right, Kunal, our first question. We already have a code scanner and static analysis tools that our developer uses. Why do we need a code defender type of solution?
Wow, this is a great question, Tom, and I really appreciate the audience for bringing this up. And many of our customers do ask a very similar question, right? So let me elaborate on this. So right now, a lot of organizations are focused on a backend or a server side security, right? And to an extent, this is understandable because there is a lot of news out there about the 0 days, ransomware, vulnerabilities, and nobody wants to become the latest victim. But ignoring the security on the client side is like only half insuring your home or your property, right? You are not going to only insure your bedroom and kitchen. You are going to take insurance from for your entire house, right? And nobody would consider insuring the half of their business system, right? So this is where the code defender with the client side web app security at the runtime with the constant monitoring and all, it complements the customer's existing code review and the scanner and the other tool, which are basically incredibly time and labor intensive, and that won't be sustainable. And all of that you do it before you push the code to the production. But once you hit the code in a production, you need a monitoring system for the runtime behavioral analysis. And this is where the code defender is a very complementary and augmentary solution with your existing code review and a scanner tool. In other words, we are not replacing them, right? We augment them and together, better together with your server-side supply chain security tools such as a code scanner, vulnerability scanner, etc., with our code defender, which is the runtime client-side web app security solution, we better together offer increased security posture for your organization.
Excellent. Thank you, Kunal. Okay, our next question. We have quite a few third-party libraries introduced to improve user engagement. Can these approved third-party libraries create a risk on our website, and how do we mitigate those?
Fantastic. Another great question. And this question also does require the gift card, right? I think this is really a great question. Team. Here, look at this, right? So as Kim showed that dependency map, right? How the third-party libraries are calling the fourth party, fifth party, and etc. So even some of our customers, they think that they got only very few third-party libraries on their websites, but here is a challenge, right? If you use our website risk analyzer, and I request you to download this free plugin that PerimeterX have developed, which is the website risk analyzer, freely available with a Chrome extension. Simply download it and run it on your website, and it is going to generate a free report that will show you the number of third-party scripts, what are the PII, PCI, sniffing that they are doing it, right? So now these third-party scripts, right, and as I mentioned, the browser simply downloads this third-party and dependency code directly from the server, and it renders dynamically on the browser, right? And this third-party script have a same level of access as the first-party code, meaning even if you only had two third-party libraries and everything else is written by your in-house development team, still those 2 or 3 third-party libraries can access the PII, PCI field on your websites, and they can exploit this data. And this is the only code that runs in your production that you do not have a control over it, right? So this is where the third-party script can really, and think about this use case scenario, right? Let's say there is an outage with any of the third-party vendor that you have integrated in your website, let's say for payment gateway, and if that is down, now this could perhaps bring down your website. This could really impact your business, right? This is where giving the visibility and monitoring with a third-party scripts, their behavior is extremely important.
Thanks, Kunal. Okay, our next question. In your example, you granularly blocked a third-party script from accessing specific form fields. On a large app, such low granularity is hardly maintainable. What are some best practices for partially blocking third-party scripts while still allowing them to perform their primary job, such as social integration or analytics?
Yeah, great question. So with our newly introduced feature, right, which is the client side mitigation, this is where many of our customers were asking, right, before this feature, when they see a third party script is accessing the PII or PCI, they will simply remove it first, and then they will do the investigation. And once they find everything okay, then that is where they again integrate that third party on their website. Now, this causes a lot of business disruption here, right? And you cannot all the time take out the third party script. This is where the comprehensive mitigation with a granular blocking, where let's say the script is accessing a 10 fields on your website, say the name, first name, last name, email ID, address, phone number, payment card information, and etc. Now, and then also it is doing monitoring the user behavior and user engagement, which web pages they are surfing, which inventory product they are looking into, right? So at this stage, instead of removing the entire script, with our granular blocking, the security team that is responsible for the compliance and the security of the website, they can say, block the third party script from accessing the PCI field and the password field, which are the PII field, but allow it to access the first name and last name. Now, this is where this feature is gaining so much popularity with our install base that now they can collaborate with their marketing team and their executive team in bringing innovation or a third party libraries on their website without worrying about the compliance and the risk, because with a granular blocking that the PerimeterX code defender provides, they could now block a specific action of the script without removing them. I hope this addresses the question around the granular blocking and how they can mitigate the risk without removing the entire script.
Excellent. Thank you, Kunal. Okay, folks, we're approaching the end of our session, so we're just going to take a couple more, just one more question here. Okay, Kunal, in addition to third-party library mitigation, are there other security best practices we should consider for our client-side website?
Totally, yep. So that it's like a multi-step journey here, right? When it comes to the client-side security, first, the visibility. First thing first, that you need to know what is running on your website, right? If you don't know what is there, then if you don't have a visibility into that, you can't secure what you cannot see it, right? As they say. So the first thing, the best practice here that we recommend to our customer, and the way we saw them that they are implementing visibility. With our product, with the Code Defender, you get the complete visibility into the first party, third party, and nth party scripts that are running on your website. Many of our customers, when we do the POC with them, they didn't even know that they have like 83 third party scripts running on their websites. And as Kim was showing in the second slide, that how the modern webs are built differently, right? Which is more of an integrations with all the third party, right? So this is where the first step, the basic hygiene, is the visibility, right? Second, finding out the vulnerabilities and the dependency map, what field they are accessing it, building the complete inventory and the baseline of their behavior, right? And then the third step is finding out and allowing them access to the certain field on the website, right? And the last step is basically finding out the anomalous behavior at the runtime by constantly monitoring the scripts and their activity, their dependency, and every single thing constantly runtime around the clock. This is the key to securing the client-side supply chain of the website.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, folks, I'd like to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. If you do happen to have additional questions following today, please feel free to reach out to us from one of the follow-up emails sent out after today's event. Once again, thank you for attending, and Kim, Kunal, thanks again for the great presentation.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for joining.
Our pleasure. Thanks, everybody.
All right, take care, everyone.